Hello, I'm Marshall Masters, publisher of the Kolbrin Bible, 21st Century Master Edition. I first published it in 2005, and I must admit, at first I was a bit skeptical when I read it for the first time, and actually my goal at that time was to debunk it. I didn't do that because the first passages of the first book of this 3,600-year-old wisdom text not only talks to the nature of God in a way that's relevant for us today, but it goes even a huge step further. It proves that the ancients knew the answer to the riddle of the Big Bang, a theory astronomers have wrestled with for decades. After that, I knew the time had come for the Kolbrin Bible to be shared with the world. That is my story in a nutshell. Dan, as a Kolbrin researcher, what is your story? How has this impacted your worldview?
That's a big question, Marshall.
Yeah, it is.
I was researching eschatology, and I was searching through a lot of wisdom texts for answers regarding a common theme that describes the few years just prior to an escalation in consciousness for humans, where the Earth goes through some troublesome changes geophysically. And I came upon the Kolbrin in search for further information. There were several accounts of similar events occurring in Earth's past, matching the same geophysical changes in the Earth I had seen in these other texts. However, in reading through the pages, it was quite transforming. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was just expecting more information, but this book had some good stuff in it, a deep understanding of things about God and about the universe that I don't see elsewhere. I learned much more than I had ever dreamed than when I first reached for the book. From then on, I was simply captivated by the writings and had to incorporate them into my repertoire of wisdom texts from which to draw for my extensive research.
Well, Dan, you know, the ancient Romans had a great saying: to the heart of a great mystery, many roads lead. You and I are on different roads, but we're within sight of each other, and we're both soldiering on to the same destination. So with this in mind, I want to give the viewers out there a quick look ahead at what you're going to see in this series. In this 10-part series, you'll see actual texts from the Kolbrin Bible about the nature of God as portrayed in chapter 1 of the first book of the Kolbrin Bible, that being the book of creation. And Dan and I will expand on these texts using a combination of spirituality and science. The difference between spirituality and science is important. With spirituality, you know what you know. But with science, there is only one absolute. Everything can and does change over time. Therefore, by combining science and spirituality, Dan and I hope to offer a stereoscopic view of the book of creation and what it says about the nature of God. Plus, in this series, I will present readings with Creator done by myself using questions formulated by Dan and based on the passages presented in this 10-part series. I'll discuss readings in more depth in a little more time, but first off, Dan, can you give those who are learning about this ancient wisdom text for the first time a brief history of the Kolbrin Bible?
I'd be happy to. The Kolbrin is a two-part compilation of ancient wisdom texts from the ancient Egyptians and Celts. Originally known as the Great Book, the first part was penned by the ancient Egyptians after the Hebrew Exodus. Unfortunately, most of the Great Book was destroyed in 30 BC when the Library of Alexandria was sacked and burned during the Roman conquest of Egypt. However, Parts of the Great Book had made their way to Britain before that time, where Celtic priests combined what remained of this ancient wisdom text along with another ancient Celtic wisdom text known as the Cole Book, which was penned during the same time as when the first Gospels of the New Testament were being written. Work started on the English language compilation and translation of the Bronze Book and the Cole Book by Celtic priests at the Glastonbury Abbey in Somerset, England. Unfortunately, the abbey was destroyed by a major fire in 1184, and the surviving priests took what remained of the text to the north of Scotland, where they continued the work. After surviving a narrow escape from destruction during World War II, the final translation, known simply as the Kolbrin, was made public by Celtic monks in 1992, after two predictions came to pass that were made by the ancient Egyptians some 3,600 years ago. First was the rise of radical Islam. In the Book of Manuscripts, verse 3, 8, and 3, one worship will pass into the four quarters of the earth, talking peace and bringing war. Keep in mind the word Islam is etymologically related to the Arabic word salam, meaning peace. The second prediction was the fall of the Soviet Union. A nation of seas will be greater than any other, but will be as an apple rotten at the core and will not endure. Aside from military historians, few actually know that the Soviet Union had the largest navy in the world when it collapsed as an apple rotten at the core. For me, the simple fact that these two predictions were made by the ancient Egyptians some 3,600 years ago, and that both came to pass in our lifetime, tells us that we are living in prophetic times. Marshall, here is where your readings with Creator based on my questions from the Kolbrin Bible can offer a very useful perspective. For those viewers interested in learning how to conduct readings on their own, do you have some suggestions?
Absolutely, Dan. In the following 9 parts in this series, a short reading with Creator about specific verses from the Kolbrin Bible is going to be presented. Now, these readings are offered solely as a reference and should only be used this way. Can you do something like this yourself? Yes, you can, provided you are seeking wisdom for yourself and others. If you want to find out where Uncle Charlie buried his fortune, go to a fortune teller and take your chances. Is this something you should do alone? Not until you've mastered the process with the help of a reliable mentor or teacher. For this reason, learning how to conduct safe and useful readings is not a do-it-yourself exercise, which is why many faiths prohibit this kind of activity, and for different reasons. But most important is the risk of troublesome imposters. I refer to these imposters as dark entities, and there are many kinds and they operate on different levels. However, they all have one thing in common. They are parasites who need to feed on the life force energy of good souls to sustain themselves. This life force energy can only come from God, and you must be on the path of light towards Creator to receive it. This is why you need to begin with a reliable mentor or teacher, as I did. How do you find this person? You do it by seeking wisdom. Then, as the old saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. This is what I call the process of synchronicity. When a mentor or a teacher appears to you, use the following 5 issues to help determine his or her strengths. 1, that everyone can talk to God. 2, the spiritual power of service to others. 3, the true nature of dark entities. 4, how to invoke God's protection in a loving way. And 5, how to conduct a safe and useful reading. The bottom line is, always trust your gut instincts. If you feel any reservations, then take no action. On the other hand, if you feel right about it, that means you have no reservations that trouble you, then proceed. This does not mean you need to be gullible. The opposite is true, because a worthy mentor will work to earn your trust, whereas a dishonest one will demand it. A good place to start is with a published author. One such author is Susan Shumsky. Now, Susan writes from a Buddhist perspective, so that may be an issue for some of you out there. However, I've interviewed her several times on another program that I do, and I have really come to have a profound respect for her philosophy and her service to other mission. So I would recommend, as a safe starting point, her book, How to Hear the Voice of God. And I want to emphasize the phrase starting point. Remember, there are no shortcuts to learning about how to conduct safe and useful readings. All right, this is important because you have to protect yourself going into your sessions. To do this, you must be able to differentiate between dark and light entities. Remember, dark entities are imposters. With this in mind, I want to offer you just 3 useful tips that I've found of value to myself, and you may want to keep those in mind. Number 1, dark entities are parasites with only one agenda: to feed off our life force energy, which comes from Creator. To do this, they use fear-based emotions. Second, dark entities seek to control your free will and will use a mixture of lies and truths to do so. On the other hand, light entities always are honest and always will respect your free will. 3, while dark and light entities can sound the same, only light entities will emit a subtle but clearly recognizable energetic spiritual presence. You must learn to recognize that energetic presence. If you are wondering how I conduct my own readings, what I can say is that I do them only to seek wisdom about matters directly related to my efforts to be in service to others, and there it is. I just use it in a mission-driven way. To start this off, so that people can get a feel for what we're doing, Dan, have you got a God question for me?
Marshall, as you and I did quite a bit of soul searching on what direction we needed to take on this series, I would like to seek out the Creator's direction as well as the first question of the series.
Okay.
God, where should our focus be in representing the true nature of God?
Good question. Now, for those of you viewers or watching, that answer in the reading will come in the next segment, which is part 2. Show 2, Creation 1:1. And with that, Dan, give us a quick look ahead at our next show, which we call Reflections of Reality.
All right. As humans, how much do we really understand about God? The Egyptians encountered several stumbling blocks in their pursuit of understanding Him. And with great frustration, they asked the question of themselves, is not a glimpse of understanding better than no understanding at all?
That is a timeless question, no doubt about it, and an excellent one to launch the series. And so next up is show 2, Reflections of Reality.